I will get things started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today to listen to this all-star group of leaders to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI. I'm Brian Vesce, the CEO of Refresher, co-moderating today's session with my colleague, Tommy Semereaux, Chief Product Officer here at Refresher. This is the most important topic in the staffing industry's history, and we're happy to be here today. I would introduce the panelists, but I really wouldn't do this esteemed group of leaders justice. So I think I'm just going to invite every member to briefly introduce themselves and share their background and why they're passionate about DEI. So we'll start with DeLibra Wesley, CEO, founder of National Recruiting Consultants, followed by Kristina Bell, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Bullhorn, Lauren Jones, founder, Leap Consulting Solutions, and Leslie Vickrey, CEO and founder of Clear Edge Marketing. DeLibra?
Hello, everyone. My name is DeLibra Wesley, and like you said, I am the founder and CEO of National Recruiting Consultants, aka NRC. We staff in special education for public schools across the country. We are about to have our 2-year anniversary. And before that, I worked for a large healthcare staffing company. And my impact, I think, at that time was focused on the organization that I was in and making sure that women especially had what they needed to be able to progress in their careers. But as I have matured in my career, I am at a point where I am realizing, for me, I am finding it important to make sure that I give back and that I want to leave the staffing industry a more diverse place than I found it. So that puts me in all kinds of situations like this where I'm speaking today. I love to educate and share my past stories and experiences. And my hope is that someone that is marginalized is able to push forward, maybe hold on a little longer, retain them in this industry. That's my true mission, is retention.
Hi, everyone. Good day. I'm Kristina Bell, and I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Bullhorn. And as many of you know, we empower the staffing industry and recruitment industry to put the world to work. So my interest in D&I started because of my lived experiences. Really, I had spent 13 years in corporate marketing and communications roles, and I was often the only Black woman or Black person on a team or in a department. So when I discovered that in the world of D&I, there were all of these terms that describe my experiences and other women who could relate to that experience of being the only, I really wanted to be a part of solutioning for them. And, you know, like DeLibra said, making the environment better for other people like me. But I wasn't in this space very long before I realized that if I really wanted to build a successful program, then I had to expand my definition of diversity and prioritize inclusion. So I try to see the world through more than just my Black woman lens, and I try to figure out ways to bring everyone along for the ride. So what really drives me now is that I know that I'm changing hearts and minds and making a real impact in how people experience work.
Thank you, Kristina. Lauren?
Well, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, both to World Staffing Summit, Jan and Jacob, and to the entire Refresher team. Thank you so much, Tommy and Brian. And then for you amazing women, you impactful women. I'm excited to share the stage with you. So my name is Lauren Jones. I'm the founder and CEO of Leap Consulting Solutions. I've been in the industry for a really long time. We're just not going to go into specific numbers because then it just is going to tell you how old I am. And we don't need ageism in this conversation, right? All kidding aside, I am so passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And part of that is I spent 22 years in corporate America, where as a female, I was marginalized. There are specific examples and stories of inequality in the way that, you know, I or other women have been treated. And we wrote a book on it and want to see change in our world and want to be a part of that change. We are back to the 1980s as far as women post-COVID, women participating in the workforce, and that just won't do. So we need to talk about it, because the more we talk about it, the more we can work towards equality, whether it's pay equality, or anyone who's been marginalized. So I am excited to be a part of this topic and to continue to try and reinforce change within our industry and be a part of that positive change.
All right. I guess that leaves me to go next. All right. Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much for having me join this panel on such an important topic. I'm Wesley Vickrey. I'm the CEO and founder of Clear Edge Marketing. I'm also the co-founder of a women in tech group called ARA with two of my very best friends, one of which is on the call today, Megan McCann and Jane Hamner. It stands for Attracting, Retaining, and Advancing Women in Tech. We have over 6,000 people part of the program across the US. My why, having grown up in the talent and tech space, very similar story to Lauren. I have witnessed firsthand the challenges for women, for myself included, and others. And now I would say opportunities. So turning it from a challenge to an opportunity, and quite frankly, just dedicate a lot of my time and energy to making change. I host a podcast called The Edge. It features executive women in recruitment, specifically to shine the light on the incredible women in our industry and for the next generation. If they can see it, they know they can be it. And for men, our allies to learn and grow alongside us. Lauren and DeLibra, you were both guests on the podcast. Kristina,
Yes.
We need to get you on soon. We also launched an allyship series. We've featured Bert Bean from Insight Global, Eric Gregg from Clearly Rated. Next up is Mark Nussbaum from Dice's Signature Consultants. We'll make change by working together, which is also why I so appreciate the two of you hosting this panel discussion and moderating it today. We all need to know DEI is for everyone. As Lauren mentioned, I am a co-author with her, one of 15, for How Women Rise. And like DeLibra and everyone, my hope is to set the next generation of leaders up in an industry that I've grown up in for great success. That's my goal and my giving of everything that I do, and that it looks much different than it does today. So thank you again for having me here. I look forward to this discussion.
Awesome. Thank you,
Amazing.
everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Wesley. Thank you, all of you. This is just an ideal panel. We can't go wrong. So as moderators, we're so fortunate to be on this, and we hope to be allies on this topic. So thank you for bringing that up as well, Wesley. And hopefully we can touch on allyship as we go through this. Quick background on me. I'm Tommy Semereaux, as Brian mentioned, Chief Product Officer at Refresher, and I'll be moderating this discussion with Brian. To start things off, I just wanted to get some recent statistics that were published from Monster's January 2023 Future of Work report. The report shows that right after company events and bonuses, DEI programs are getting cut. When polling recruiters, only 5% said DEI efforts are one of their top 3 priorities. All that, yet 40% said more than ever, workers expect to learn about a potential employer's DEI efforts. Adding on top of that, a survey by Gen Z recruiting platform Ripple Match found that 75% of candidates would reconsider applying to a company if they were unsatisfied with its DEI efforts. Kristina, you're the one who brought this report to me to begin with. Thank you so much. There's been really insightful data in here. It seems like the priorities of candidates, contingent labor, and employees don't match up with that of employers, especially in economic times such as this. How should staffing agencies go about their DEI program when making changes to business plans or during uncertain economic times?
Yeah, thanks, Tommy. I think companies should think about DEI like it thinks about its core values, right? It's a part of the culture. It's a part of the foundation of how we work here. It's a part of how we expect leaders to show up and the behaviors we want them to exhibit on their team. So when economic times are tough, are you willing to sacrifice your culture? If you ask yourself that question, hopefully the answer is no. then you can make some really good decisions, because even if you have to make cuts, right, the employees who are still with your company or agency would probably very much to have sense of belonging. So you have to not just think about the revenue generating departments. You have to really understand what your D&I leaders are doing and the impact that they're making on retention and employee experience. So think beyond the quantitative measures, but thinking quantitatively, I'll share with you that since I've been at Bullhorn the last 2 years, we've been able to increase our representation of people of color by 45% in the US, of women and gender minority globally by 17%. I'm not saying I've single-handedly done this, but I have partnerships with talent acquisition, right? I'm building partnerships with people leaders across the globe. And there's impact to that. There's impact to having conversations about inclusive leadership. And sometimes it's difficult to measure what that really looks like. So I think if you really think about inclusion, diversity as a part of who you are, the fabric of your culture, the same way you think about your core values and your employee statements, your employee vision, all of that stuff, then you can make some really impactful decisions when times are tough.
Awesome. Wesley or Lauren, anything to add to that?
Go ahead, Leslie.
I would basically say the same exact things as Kristina, because and listen, I'm in a marketing role, right? Anything without P&L, direct P&L responsibility or considered overhead is typically at risk when things change in an industry, unfortunately. And I would say or argue that today, and Lauren, this is actually something we covered on your podcast recently with Rob Mann, some of the trends. And one of the trends is really to consider those groups as actually growth drivers. So if it's HR, finance, technology, training, marketing, we are growth drivers in the company. We are protecting your current assets. So Kristina, as you mentioned, you can look at turnover and tie that directly into a cost. Focusing in on inclusion or belonging, if you're not, you're at greater risk of losing members of your team, in particular minorities and the disenfranchised. And unfortunately, if you think of that, it is going to set you back versus ahead. DEI, it is a competitive differentiator. It is a growth driver and should be considered that way. And we often look at when we're talking to clients and prospects, are you growth minded? Yes, of course, you need to make really smart decisions on running your company and run it efficiently. You should be doing that regardless of the market, which would help you not to have to cut back on such important initiatives. So those who will win and succeed will think of it more as a growth driver or competitive differentiator and understand the huge risk of it setting them back by cutting it.
And the data is behind both Kristina and Leslie's points. There's a book by Dr. Stephanie Johnson. We had her come to the Lady Leaders, but one of the most astounding statistics when it relates to diverse teams is their output, which are 6x. So a diverse team, diverse in thought, in age, gender, ethnicity, all of that, truly diverse teams, the output is 6x. So it seems like a no-brainer to me, and yet.
Yeah,
here we
DeLibra.
And yet, here we are.
It does seem like a no-brainer. But what's happening?
I think the things that when we look at cuts, it's the things that employees can see visibly and are almost tangible that are getting cut, but that's not really DE&I. It is the things that we're talking about. It's the mindset. It's making it a part of your company's DNA. Before I make a decision, am I considering the marginalized employees in the organization first? Because if you consider them first, you're going to encompass everyone. It's about the way we make decisions. But, this is what happens, right? There's a downturn in the economy. We have to make cuts. So typically it comes that training and development piece gets slashed pretty early on. And so, your training's around diversity. Maybe even if you have people that are relegated to those roles, may be cut. It's unfortunate. I don't necessarily think that's the right way to go. But if it's something that has to happen, there are things that you can do. And the biggest thing, the number one thing to all of this is really inclusion. Every single one of us on some level knows how it feels to be left out. You know how it feels to not get picked to be on the team at school, or you're left out of an invite at a party, and it's a big ouch. If all of the staffing leaders, if we could all just keep the mindset of how do I make sure I'm not leaving people out? I'm not leaving anyone behind. Everyone has an opportunity to share their voice and their thoughts, then it's not that much about the cost. It's just doing the right thing. I do think it's a bad idea to cut all your training and your DEI from your organizations. But if there are cuts that have to be made, there are so many things we can still do to make sure that the initiatives are still in place.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
To what you were saying, there's just numerous reports, endless reports stating the value it brings to the business and the bottom line and all of that. But then DeLibra, with the actual experiences that happen within the company and who it affects from there, that gets really real. And we can start resonating with that on some level, all of us on some level. But obviously there's a spectrum there. And I'd love for the audience to get some real world experiences within this category, or just to hear what some examples might be of what employees experience within a staffing agency or even outside of a staffing agency when a DEI strategy is in place versus one that's not.
I'll start. So I actually brought this up earlier today in a meeting, and it was with my leaders, and basically how an example of how what I don't want us to be. I in the past had an employee. She was gay, and she didn't report directly to me. I was the COO of a company, and she did not feel comfortable letting people know that she was a part of the LGBTQ plus community. It came down to her needing time off for her wedding, and that's how it came about. Because when she joined the organization, she didn't feel safe. She listened in on conversations that people and things that people would say, microaggressions, those little slight, and her leader allowed it to happen. So she didn't feel safe. That to me is a really good example of what not to do. I want an organization, and I want staffing, the industry as a whole, where people can come and be who they are. Show up and identify as yourself, because you won't be able to give us your best and do your best if you're keeping a part of who you are a secret. So I don't want those kind of secrets. I want to know who you are, and we're going to celebrate who you are, because I know if you can give me and show up as your best, you'll do the best for the organization. And that's about that 6X comment, right? Everyone who feels safe enough to talk and give their advice, you are able to tackle problems and issues in a way that so many different views. You come up with so many different ways of looking at things. That makes a company profitable. That's going to affect the bottom line. So, of course, I won't take up too much time, but the opposite of that is, you make it safe. You make it to where people can be who they want to be, or who they are, and they don't have to hide who they are, and they're able to bring themselves to work and do a great job. To me, it's simple, but I guess I lived this a lot, and I've worked in situations where it wasn't the case, and I just didn't like that, and I took it upon myself to make changes. And in my organization, I'm lucky because I get to start from scratch, and we're going to do it right from the bottom up.
Well, a lot of people, DeLibra, leave their company, and I remember for ARA, we did a survey that talked about why women are leaving companies, or what's happening when they leave from unfair treatment and not feeling safe and belonging. And a lot of them became entrepreneurs like you, because they could set that foundation. And the beautiful thing about what you said is that you lead with trust and transparency. You lead as the CEO and founder of your company by putting your whole self out there. It kind of gives that permission to the whole staff to be themselves. You encourage it. And part of the challenge, and I like to believe I lead our company the same way. I encourage people to bring their whole selves to work and who they are. And I want to learn and grow from them along with that process. But when you're in a company where that's not necessarily the case, and I still hear stories of people who they don't feel safe bringing their whole selves to work to be able to do that. So I bet people would love to know how we can make that change, but that's something I still see as a struggle. So with your point of those who are doing it and those who don't, you probably have a lot of staff who don't feel comfortable being themselves, and you're at risk of losing them 100%.
Thank you, Wesley. Yeah.
Hey, Tommy, the only thing I would add to that really quickly is that, Lauren, is that when you don't have a D&I program or strategy or whatever in place, you lose control of the narrative, and employees start to fill in the blank, right? With whatever they want. And that's on your Glassdoor, that's on LinkedIn, that's wherever it is. This company doesn't care about fill in the blank. And that's what you don't want. You want them to know, sometimes in the absence of content or substance, people fill in with what they want, even if you care, even if you want to do the right thing, even if you're thinking about it, even if there's a lot of work going on the back end that they don't know about yet. they're going to fill it in with whatever makes sense based on what their experience is. So keep control of what that narrative is about the kind of business that you have, and go out there with something strong that really resonates with people.
Yeah, for all of these things, you've got to see all the connecting parts. Look at the generational conversation that we were talking about earlier, right? Millennials, Gen Zs, they're looking for authenticity. They're looking for transparency. They're looking for safety. They're looking for a connection. That's what any of us want. Any generation of us want those things. They're inherently important specifically to that generation. But I think more than anything is the, cultivating that environment of safety, and whereby people can express their opinions without fear of judgment and or retaliation or discrimination. And it seems, again, it seems like table stakes, but it's continues to be a rising conversation. And it's, where do we get past? I guess maybe my question to you: how do we get past that? Right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, from what I can see, is culture is everything, and what better way to improve culture than a DEI program? It seems to affect every parts of it in the most valuable way for everyone involved, and it truly affects all facets of the business. And we're not talking about anything here we can't do today. I do hear excuses once in a while for struggles with the DEI program. And it's because, data this or legalities around receiving data or something along those lines. But everything you guys have mentioned so far, there's really nothing to excuse. This is something we can implement and benefits everyone today. Is that fair to say? And are there other excuses you hear?
Yeah, there are excuses. And I think, in my opinion, where I'm now focusing my efforts, and you brought this up early on, is that your candidates that you're looking to recruit and hire are looking for this, right? But yet executives are missing the mark, or not quite there, or quick to make cuts. And there's just like this gap. Well, in the middle is where I think the answer is going to be. It's kind of hard to change the mind of people that are at the top. They got there a certain way and it worked for them, so they kind of think that's the way to go. I think it's all about the allyship in the middle. So those middle managers need so much training around safety and inclusion, and how and why it is important. And there has to be, I will let a leader tell me this once. And I was like, okay, you've used it once, so what are you going to do about it? Hear a lot. Well, I had this opening for a VP slot or an executive, and there just wasn't diverse talent out there. There's not women with experience or people of color or whatever, and yeah, you're right. They don't exist. They're not already out there in those seats. Our numbers already show that. So you're either going to have to hire from outside of our industry and make the skills transfer, or you're going to have to hire someone on potential and know that you can train them to get them to where they need to be. And that takes work. Either of those things is a lot of work. And so we tend to just continue to promote and hire the same way we've always done, because we want the easier route. It's just not going to be easy.
Yeah. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. What's that the definition of?
Little insanity.
A little insanity here.
Yeah.
The middle management's an interesting piece to me, DeLibra. Sorry, Wesley.
The last thing I was going to say is what you accept, you promote. And so I think the inaction, Kristina made this point earlier, the inaction is also an opinion, whether you like it or not. Inaction is telling the rest of the world something about you. And I think that's what businesses don't understand, or leaders independently don't understand, is lack of action. We, like Kristina said, we fill in the blank.
Right. You're giving them that power of that narrative, for Kristina's point. I mean, just on the excuse front and kind of playing off that a little bit is, we have seen a lot of leaders, they either believe that they've already reached a state of diversity without knowing what it actually means. So they haven't asked their employees for input of who they are, what's on their mind, or looking at the HR data, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit on where to get started, or, which happens a lot, They lead in fear of saying or doing the wrong thing instead of doing something. So instead they do or say nothing. And to Lauren's point, by doing nothing, you're actually saying something. So for example, a lot of companies chose when George Floyd was murdered because they felt like their employees knew that, well, they know that we support them. You know, we're diverse. So then they know we support them. These CEOs didn't take into consideration the sadness felt by communities, the fear people felt for their own lives and that of their own children or families, and the sense of just loss and heartbreak and concern and worry. Instead, they felt, oh, well, we share articles or we talk about, you know, diversity and we're diverse. That covered it. But again, they didn't say anything, and that spoke volumes. So they lead in fear. And they're afraid to even say it, that if I say something, I may say something wrong. And then it could be even worse. So I'm just going to not say anything. But that's where we need to be comfortable having these open conversations and dialogues with each other to know that we're all learning and growing. But you have to do something. By not, you're saying something. So there really shouldn't be an excuse.
Yeah.
Just to add on that, on the excuse topic, I feel pretty strongly that the staffing industry has one of the most unique opportunities for implementing strong DEI programs, not only for themselves, right, their firms, but also their customers. And when I've engaged in conversations on this, and I've been in the staffing industry for 20 years, I ran a staffing business, I grew up in the Allegis Group business. And when I talk to people today, it's, well, what am I supposed to do, right? I just need to fill jobs. And so, you know, it is one of those things that where I go, is that an excuse or is there opportunity there? And I guess my question for the panel is, where have you seen this implemented effectively within staffing businesses, specifically to how they're helping their customers?
I'll speak. I recruit, so I'm recruiting as we speak. When I'm done with this, I'm probably back to recruiting. So I've realized I get into that I know better, shame on me, right? I get into that same spot. If I'm in a position where I need to quickly fill something, it's whoever I've got that's on my bench that's already ready to go that I'm gonna submit. So the key as a recruiter, whether you're recruiting for your company internally or you're recruiting for your clients externally, is you have to find time to work on building a bench, building your network in diverse areas so that when I do have a position that comes up, I have a diversity of candidates to reach out to. So if I, for instance, I'm working on, for me, I work in school districts. So if I'm working on a search for a speech language pathologist and it's a quick fill, they need someone right away, and all I have are these 3 candidates that I've already been talking to, that's going to limit what I'm able to do. What I have to do is carve out time to be proactive, to go to the Black Speech Language Pathology Association and post to make sure they know about my organization, go to different organizations to make sure that I'm getting my name out in different ways. But that is not going to work when you're in a pinch. When you're in a pinch, you already have to have it. So my tip is you have to carve out time. Even if you only have an hour a week, you have to carve out time to proactively look in places that you're not normally looking, because otherwise you're going to fill it with what you have. And even our clients are asking for it. Everyone wants diversity. And then whole nother story is you have to make sure when they say that I want diverse candidates, you know exactly what they mean. But make sure you understand what they mean and then be proactive. You have to be.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. That makes sense why a plan would need to be in place, or else everything becomes short-sighted and you knee-jerk reactions to a coin-operated business is what it feels at times. And if you don't have a plan in place, you just go immediately to the situations you mentioned, that near-term network.
I think just another thing, I'm not a recruiter, so if this is way off base, and just tell me to stay in my place and I'll back up off of this. But, I also wonder if we can ask more questions of our clients, right? We're not just going out looking for a woman to fill a spot or a person of color to fill a spot. We should be trying to find the right person that brings a level of diversity to that team, whatever that looks like. It's not always about skin color, it's always about gender. What else can you learn about the team that helps you fill a void that they might have that is a little bit deeper than just those two things that we always kind of tend to run right to? So ask more questions, find out more about the team, and think sort of more expansively about the definition of diversity and what it can mean for that client.
One of the things I've learned heavily, Kristina, from, DeLibra, we work with DeLibra closely. She's on retainer with us. She helps us learn and grow every single day. I learn from DeLibra, which is always why when I see her on a panel like this, I say yes, hands down, because I know I'll learn from this experience as well. And one of the things that she has taught me over and over again is to always look in-house first, meaning not to promote from within, but are you ready for what you're looking for? And you have to fix what's happening inside if there is something that needs to be fixed before bringing more people inside. In other words, let's say you don't have a safe environment, or you're in a situation where it really isn't diverse, and it's not diverse because of a very specific reason. Maybe the executive team doesn't believe in it. They're not investing in it. The last thing I would want to do is bring someone into that environment. In addition to keeping our pipelines and, not hiring for sense of urgency, but always pipelining and looking for the right and best talent and a diverse mix of talent across the board. Kristina, to your point, we also have to be careful that we're not putting them in a situation where it will be uncomfortable. And I have heard many stories, especially in technology. I've mentored a woman in particular who was a woman of color, put on a team. She was the only woman, and it was a really terrible situation. And she was placed by a recruiting agency. And you know what? She left, didn't tell that recruiting agency what was happening. So they lost the candidate, hurt their reputation with the company. And she then worked with another agency who cared more about her and what was important to her and the type of companies she went to work with. So we need to keep that in mind when looking at how we can work with our clients to ask the questions. Kristina, I think of us asking them more questions. When's the last time you did a sentiment survey? What does diversity mean to you? How does it fit within, ask those questions. Are we working with companies who believe the same way we believe passionately about it?
Yeah, and I guess combining both Kristina and DeLibra's points and Leslie's points, maybe DeLibra, how do you engage with your customer when you're talking about roles and diversity and what it is you can do to help satisfy those requirements? I think from my perspective, when I talk to people that are running staffing businesses, it's how they engage with their customers that sort of they're uncomfortable about, and they're not sure how to engage in that. They just want the requirements. They want to go back and they recruit on it. So for you, DeLibra, how do you engage with your customers around diversity?
I think a lot of it comes down to not so much about, I think where the ickiness comes in is typically around when you do submit candidates and things go wrong or they say things and you just take on a consultative approach. I like to think that we're all consultants. And the advice that I give, luckily I'm in a true staffing situation where I'm a co-employer. So the advice that we give our clients is, we're in this together. I'm the employer and so are you. So the decisions we make, we need to really keep an HR-centric focus in mind. We have to make proper hiring decisions. So usually it kind of flips on its head. It's the other way around. Maybe
Sure.
we send a client a candidate and they don't want them because of a specific reason that they should not even be considering, and then advising them around that, and vice versa. I'm on the recruiting side, and I've had a few interviews that have gone awry where the candidates come back and said no. I've had some people of color that before they agree to do interviews, we do some demographic studies of the area because they've been placed by agencies in unsafe areas and in situations they don't want to be in. And so being mindful of both sides. Now, if the client is making mistakes, we have to take on a consultative approach and help them understand why that isn't the case. And then ultimately, you have to make a decision. If they can't change, is this a company that I want to align myself with, or a client I want to work with, or not? There are times that all business isn't good business and you just don't want to do that. And then, but we have to take on the approach of educating. And so if someone said, I mean, I remember I have a friend whom I work with now that had a client that didn't really want to work with women or overweight people because they were lazy. And straight up told her that. So that's what he wanted her to go find him a fit man for his jobs. So, I mean, you just
everybody's like readjusting themselves in their seats.
I know it's so uncomfortable, but it happens.
But it happens.
It's reminding me, Lauren and Kendra, who's here, of the statement you say when you hear really uncomfortable things. The say it moment.
See it, say it. See something, say something, or start rocking back and forth, and somebody will ask you what's wrong.
Someone said breathe. Yes, you just breathe. Oh my goodness. But you have to have, I call rescue statements, know how you're going to get yourself out of that situation. If you as a recruiter or a salesperson don't know exactly what to say, how to get out of the situation and go get help. But you just have to be able to consult with people and take on the approach that I'm here to help educate them, not just they give me the order and I have to feel it and do what they say because they're the client. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
There is one part, we're getting a little short on time, and I don't want this to end at all, but I think there's a piece we should touch on and kind of tie it all together, hopefully, too. Lauren, to put you on the spot, we haven't touched on tech and how it may help support some of these efforts, and maybe it'll help some agencies get started. For those listening who haven't started their program or are a little bit lost, how can they start with tech as well as just in general through practice?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's still evolving, so it's really interesting to see what's happening out there. And even tools like ChatGPT know what DE&I is, and it gave me a punch list of 4 strategies that an organization can use. So there are some pretty basic things out there you can do to go get well informed. ChatGPT happens to be one of them. But when we think about the influence that we are able to have we're a workforce industry, right? We have so much influence in improving this specific topic. Technology can be one avenue, but it can't be the only avenue. You need a holistic approach and a holistic, not solution, but strategy to ensure that you have a safe working environment for everyone, inclusive working environment for everyone. So part of it starts with what you put out into the world. So there are technologies that will come and look at your job descriptions and help you rewrite them. 98% of job postings are written with masculine bias. A woman will only apply if she's 100%, she feels like she's 100% aligned to it. So we're already at a disadvantage with 98% of the job postings being written with masculine bias. The average job posting is 6.7 years old. So we just keep regurgitating old garbage. So have you looked at what you're putting out into the ether, and is it attracting a diverse pool of potential candidates? So think about that first. So maybe the reason you're only getting one demographic of candidate is because you keep putting it out into the same place and it keeps saying the same thing. So that messaging starts with your job post. We've said forever ad infinitum in this industry that the first thing that people see when it's associated with our brand is our job posting. So put some thought into that. It matters when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are tools like Get Optimal that can help you reevaluate that. Then there's distribution. There's so much technology, intelligent technology now, putting jobs to diversity boards, places where we may never have traditionally posted, so that there is a different audience looking at those job postings. Get online with that, get on board with that, where you're putting your job postings. If you're putting them in the same old raggedy places that you've always put them, you're going to get the same old candidates that you've always gotten. And so it's switching things up, and there are tools like PandoLogic, Broadbean, all of that, whether it's programmatic or traditional job distribution. There are diversity tools with each of those that can help navigate where it goes and change where it goes. Don't just do the same old. And then finally, the candidates coming in. How are you measuring the propensity for a diverse candidate? And so there are tools that will actually go through your database and help you see the potential for a diverse candidate. So when you're looking at your technology ecosystem, ensuring that there's equality there. Now, there's a lot of argument around AI, because is AI programmed by a middle-aged white dude? Yes, I know. And so what are we doing to combat that? And there are more and more development happening with more diverse engineers, and that's really what we need. And so I think we're going to see solutioning happening around the AI world. Can't come soon enough. So when you're thinking about your technology stack, understand that there are different things that you can do to move forward. What we can't do is nothing.
Right. Thank you for those examples. That's
Sure.
really helpful. I think we're running up on time. We're just past time. So I just want to thank you again, DeLibra, Kristina,
Yes,
Wesley,
thank you,
for
everyone.
unbelievable.
Thank you.
I wish we had more time. Your passion clearly shows. We need more time for this. So thank you again. I hope everybody listening, please connect with us if you haven't, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you,
Hannah.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for having us, Brian and Tommy. Great to see you all.
Yeah.
You as well.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Bye.
See you, DeLibra, Kristina.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Nice
y'all.
to see you.
Bye.